Hey, this is Sense, and I just got back from seeing the premiere of The Suicide Squad, not to be confused with Suicide Squad with no the at the beginning. It's been pretty anticipated. There's a little bit of a history with the first movie, which I don't even know if canon-wise, it's kind of may not exist. I don't know. I don't know. Think that's really too important for this movie. It's more just a fun ride kind of a movie. But yeah, the first movie honestly was I think the first D. I never saw like Man of Steel or I don't know which other DC movies that come out by that point. But Suicide Squad was one of the first ones I went to see with my sister. We were super excited. Trailers were looking exciting. We loved the characters. I had actually read the series. This one was based off of Deadshot and Harley Quinn and King Shark and all that. I had read the comics, so I was excited. And that movie ruined everything. Yeah, even to this day, I've barely seen that many DC movies, mostly just because of how much that disappointed me. And I have read a decent amount of comics, so seeing how DC was treating it, I just didn't feel the need to watch them. Today, I went to see The Suicide Squad, which was actually a really fun movie. I was a little bit worried when I first got there and sat down, and on one hand, we had like a 6-year-old kid, which I'm like, why is your 6-year-old kid in this R-rated movie? And then on the other hand, you had two people on a date who were really loud and laughing and talking and whatever. Nope, they actually ended up being great. They laughed at the right times. They were quiet at the right times as well. So that made for a pretty good viewing experience. The audience was pretty full, and there was a good reaction to it. So that's part of the reason why I like seeing movies in theater, getting that energy from everybody else enjoying everything as well. I definitely do not. Some of the stuff where the kid, a few moments were like, "Oh, that scared me," and they definitely were not following along the whole story. We were about, towards the finale part, the shark's running. They're like, is the shark one of the good guys? It's like, I don't know why you have your kid in this movie, watching this movie. But all that outside the movie stuff aside, just hop right into the rating. And then after that, we can get into more of the spoiler talk. Almost tempted, honestly, to give it a 5 out of 5. It was that fun. I really feel like I could go watch it again. They were saying a few things here and there, a little bit of a commentary on the United States, a little bit of a commentary on just grabbing stuff from space and bringing it to Earth and do whatever you want with it. Therefore, people, humanity, corporations, whatever, deal in a lot of situations, which is, pulling things out of their element, messing with nature and that kind of thing. So you definitely get some commentary, but overall, the movie, I don't think really had a real point to to really push at the audience. There was more things that were hinted at and touched on, and they definitely, I think, were pretty good. And obviously, there's definitely something going on with your Rick Flag and your Peacemaker and other characters like that. Typically, I would like to give a 5 out of 5 to a movie where not only was it a fun thing to watch, but also gave a lot of food for thought afterwards. This one was not a huge amount of food for thought. It was just an entertaining movie. So 4 out of 5. It was very entertaining. Let's just get into it. Favorite characters will definitely be King Shark. I mean, I like him from, whenever I read him in the comics as well. And similar here, just the way he interacted, his humor. I think it was Stallone who voiced him. He did a good job. Bloodsport? Yeah, Bloodsport, I believe, because I think Bloodshot's the other color. Anyway, Bloodsport, he's got a cool mask. He was definitely a very interesting character. Not a very interesting character, but I do enjoy him as kind of our lead character in a sense. It does kind of feel like a reskinned Deadshot, which is kind of just the whole. I'm not that familiar with Bloodsport. I'm not at all familiar with him as a comic book character, but it just feels like I'm watching Deadshot, but with cooler gadgets. Overall, I really enjoyed his character as well. I enjoyed his fighting, his action, and everything. The dynamic between him and some of the other big, muscly, great fighting guys were pretty good. Definitely they did pull some real shocks in this one because I mean Suicide Squad, you're expecting a lot of deaths, and as soon as I saw the large lineup, right, as soon as it got announced, oh, there's going to be like 40 people in the Suicide Squad. I'm like, all right, so we're losing like at least two-thirds of these, 3/4, two-thirds at least of these people are dying right off the rip. And I was not disappointed. Now they did kind of fake us out a little bit with the fact that they had Harley Quinn with the B group to begin with, so you kind of were thinking, oh, so obviously this group can't totally all fail because Harley Quinn's there, and then they totally all fail. You're like, oh, okay. There's definitely a lot of those cool little twists where they were aware of you, the audience, and how you were like, this is obviously what's going to happen. Let's twist that, right? So, yeah, like I said, we're going to be spoiler in this, so the fact that we actually killed Rick Flag was very unexpected, and so they had to pull into some like Mortal Kombat X-ray vision while they did that, but definitely very interesting. It was very unexpected, and I definitely kind of enjoyed that dynamic they kind of were setting up there, right? Because they're both military guys, and they were both doing this for their country and all that kind of thing, but then they have different reactions to learning their country has something to do with it. Now, how their country had something to do with it is a little weird to me because I thought the Nazis were the ones who set that up, or was that just a story they told everyone while the US was doing it? But they said and people made money off killing the Nazis, so I'm a little lost, even though I did obviously notice that it was US. I don't know, as soon as they saw the show the astronauts, I assumed they were US astronauts, so I was like, obviously US is connected to it somehow. There was no real twist with that, but there's just a lot of other ones, like who survives and who doesn't, who's important, who's not as well. Like you're losing people as a story. No, the beginning loses a lot of characters, including Boomerang, which is unexpected. I was just looking and watching the movie, right? The beginning part, and they put his name, in the bottom of the screen there, and I was like, oh, I guess he's still going to be important in this movie. I'm not sure what they're going to do with him, but he's still going to be important, I guess. And then like 5 minutes later, he's dead. And I'm like, but they were anticipating that when the way they put it together, the way they arranged the credits and everything, and you knew that's what they were expecting, and it was really nice. I mean, obviously, now that I've seen the movie, I can look back at the trailer and say, okay, some of this was super clear. I should have expected Polka Dot Man to be more important due to some of the scenes that we saw in the trailer, and he turned out pretty good. I mean, I think all the characters. Oh, let me just throw this in here. Taika Waititi is really just everywhere in Hollywood right now. I just saw him in the Free Guy trailer. He's obviously there. He was really good here too. I really enjoyed his little couple scenes he had, and I also like the fact that it played on DC is one where they really love the legacy characters, right? You have. Here's the first version, the second one, the third. Obviously, sometimes they don't put second and third on there. Like, take something like Flash. There's Flash. Even though there's multiple people in the title, you got to figure out which ones you're talking about. I like the idea of this is Ratcatcher too, right? I do remember seeing that, like Scarecrow, and I think there's a Scarecrow too, but the one I'm thinking about is Ragdoll and Ragdoll 2. That was from... Actually, that may not have been from Suicide Squad. That may have been from another Secret Six, another DC group of villains who are doing good. But I remember Ragdoll and Ragdoll 2. That would always get me because, I mean, if you want to see some of the strange stuff DC gets into, definitely look into Ragdoll 2's history. Everything about that character is very interesting. Leaves a mark on the mind that DC definitely can write those stories that will stick in your mind. You'll remember them. Maybe not for all the right reasons, but you remember them. And this movie, I think, was also mostly memorable. Obviously, they picked a villain, which made it also very memorable, because how many times are you in the movie watching in the movie theater like, wow, let me watch this action movie. Oh, look, there's a giant sea star, space star eye thing try to take over the city, stomping around like a kaiju. Like, how many times have you, like, James Gunn had his he didn't just have a finger, he had his whole hand. You could see his humor and his whole style in there. It was pretty nice. I think it was a nice kind of contrast to how he does Guardian of the Galaxy. He's allowed to be grittier, allowed to be R rated, so violence could be a little bit more upfront, but you still had just a lot of elements that were, I don't know, it just feels like James Gunn type of movie to me. And obviously with his brother along for a ride, you got several of the characters, Weasel and other characters, were just how they were acting and all that. You're like, you can recognize that physicality. It was good humorous, but sometimes also sad moments that kind of balanced out there. Obviously, Volume 2 has that scene with Drax and Mantis talking, and this one, they're seen in the bus where they're just talking, scenes like that. That's what I liked about the first. I mean, not much for the first movie that I did like, but what I did like from the first one was that scene where they're just sitting in the bar talking, and they're like, do we go on with this? What do we do? And they're just going back and forth. And you get to see these individual characters, because as much as heroes are great, but often some of the most interesting characters in terms of personalities and quirks and stuff are given to the villains, because you kind of need to give them a reason to do the things they do. Now, heroes, it's a more narrow path that you send them down. So obviously you have a few archetypes that you mostly fall into. And yeah, some people are outside of it, but you can normally pick, okay, so this is the Punisher type, driven for revenge, taking out bad guys any means possible to make it better for everybody else. You've got your, I stand up for what is right, guilt, whatever reason. There's like a set path there. Villains can be very weird with it. Now, I mean, it's also very simple to make. It's very easy to make them very simple, just revenge or something. But you got Polka Dot Man is like, his story kind of just pops out there, but he ends up being somewhat of a sad story to him. But at the same time, the way they showed in the movie was just like, I'm pretty sure some of the scenes with him had some of the biggest laughs, because it's super like, I just can't believe what I'm seeing right now. So that was very good. I enjoyed his performance from the actor as well. Ratcatcher 2, another great performance. I will say all the characters, I mean, Harley Quinn was not really needed. She's somewhat become synonymous with Suicide Squad, and she's a popular character by her own right, so she's in there. Definitely a few scenes she's in, a few things she's doing. I'm like, you could chop these out of the movie and they really wouldn't do a whole lot. Like, it's entertaining to watch. It's got its cool style. It's got its good flair. Some good fight scenes. But technically, she's not really. Obviously, if the story was pushing a bigger overall theme, bigger overall message, you can say, well, she's not in line with that message. But they weren't really, so it fits just fine because it's cool stuff happening. It's saving the day. Overall, some good fights, some great jokes and humorous moments. I think it was a lot of fast paced, but they also took their time in some moments. I really enjoyed that, letting us get to know these characters a little bit better. There was kind of a twist with Peacemaker, but not really, due to the way they were introducing the characters and giving everybody backstories and things that were interesting. Peacemaker never got that. So it was pretty clear as we were getting towards the end, I'm like, unless we're randomly going to get one as he dies, for the rest of the team, it's really leaning more towards him betraying the team. Like I told you, spoilers. Because you always do that with those kind of movies. Whenever you're getting into backgrounds of every characters aside from specific characters you're not giving them, it means either A, it's coming out at some very crucial moments, or they're a character they don't want you to identify too closely with, so that you will be not as hurt when they betray you. Because whenever, my mind's jumping to one of my favorite shows, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They really, as the show went along, they were showing you more and more of, some of these characters just for them to betray you later on. You're like, what? You feel just as hurt as the other characters. And obviously, I don't think people quit when, the betrayals happen, but it's really a visceral kind of feeling for people who are really into it. So, I don't know, movies often kind of shy away from that. They try to shock you with it, right? It's supposed to be a shocking one, but it's not supposed to really hurt you. So they don't want you building up too much of attachment to those characters. So obviously, as like, Peacemaker's funny, and they were doing a lot of good scenes he's in. They were actually cutting to his reaction to some scenes where I was like, I mean, it's John Cena, and he's kind of just funny to see his reactions to some of this, but we're still not really connecting with him. So that's why I wasn't too surprised when that all shook out at the end. I was shocked with Rick Flag, but I'm also happy that I feel like most characters got, you kind of, obviously, aside from the ones who all were killed pretty quick, you got why during the movie. Like the last one, you're like, who's Katana? Why is she here? Obviously, if you know the comics, you know who she is, but the movie made zero sense. They just quickly say something, write some stuff on screen, and you're like, there you go, you have a character now. This one, I was a little bit worried in the beginning when they were just flashing through characters real quick and saying, they do this, he can do that. I'm like, it's giving me flashbacks, so let's not do that. But those are all the characters we're killing off. So the ones that we were really following were also given quick lead up to who they were, but it wasn't done in such a blatant, over the top way. It was more standard. It was so that in a way that you will get more about them later on and build it up to satisfying conclusion. Talking about that conclusion, now that I mentioned that, it was definitely a lot of I guess it just kind of ties into some of that gore R-ratedness of it, which most of it was pretty good. Again, I was sitting here like, is this 6-year-old gonna be okay seeing this? Even some of the trailers before, I was like, I know if I was 6, I mean, like this, I'm saying 6, I don't know how old the kids were there, but I know one of them stood up and was like wobbling, like they looked like they were not even, it looked like they hadn't been even walking that long. So I was like, how old are these kids? Just the idea of something piercing your eye and then rats. Yeah, that's just that whole deal. Was like, ugh. And I do like how they really showed some of these comic book characters. People like Polka Dot Man and Ratcatcher. You really got a feel for why these comic book characters can actually be actual villains, right? Like, that's one of the things I love. And, obviously I think they did it with Spider-Man recently with Mysterio. And, they're just these characters that I think are just really interesting. Take an interesting aspect, and you're like, that's not that scary. But with this character, they make it scary. The Riddler, he's some character where you're like, he's just sitting here telling jokes and telling riddles or whatever, and then we keep reading the comics, he gets into some schemes that you're like, oh, this guy is serious. He may look goofy, put some sideburns on him and a bowler hat, but some of the stuff he comes up with, some of the stuff going on in his head's pretty sick. And it's similar for a lot of characters, like someone like Ratcatcher, you're gonna be like, ooh, what's the big deal with Ratcatcher? You see some of the stuff Ratcatcher is doing in this movie, and you're like, I can kind of see why this person's in jail. And I do like that aspect with characters, like Mysterio gets teased for his fishbowl helmet and all that stuff. But when he really gets serious, like when he was messing with Daredevil and some other times he really decided to go after Spider-Man on a more psychological level, you really see that he can really do some damage, and I really like that aspect of taking characters who are not, I mean, obviously, it's interesting to have your characters who are like, ooh, I'm Venom, I'm stronger, faster, and I evade your spider sense, that's cool and all, but having a villain who's more, today, I'm going to ruin your entire mental state and make you think you're insane, and I'm just, tell you what, I'm just gonna drive you nuts, Those are the villains that I think are more interesting, and they also have more interesting motivations, in my opinion. So, Purple Man's another great one. But anyway, I think that's enough of me rambling and getting really far off topic. Obviously, talk about Marvel. I'm more of a Marvel person than a DC person by how quickly I keep diving over there. But that's my review for the Suicide Squad. I'd give it a 4 out of 5. If I gave in-betweens, it'd be a 4.5, but I don't do in-betweens, so it's a 4 out of 5. My name is Sense. This is my review of the Suicide Squad, and I'll see you next week with another movie review. Maybe Respect, might be Free Guy, might be both.